Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Terrence Mitchell, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Edinboro University. Welcome, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you so much, Dr. Porter. I'm happy to be here.
We are so glad to have you. So first, I would love for you to start by telling our viewers and listeners a little about your background. Where does your story begin?
I began my work at the University of Oklahoma doing Black student services over 30 years ago. And over time, I've worked at 6 different campuses, including SUNY Oneonta, where I was before I got to Edinboro. And I've had many years and many experiences that inform my work.
What a rich background. You have served for several years now as a diversity and inclusion officer. How would you describe your current thinking about diversity, and how has your thinking changed over time?
I think now that I think more broadly about diversity than I did when I first entered the field. I started doing work around race and ethnicity, which is of course important to the field. But as I got older and as I traveled more and went to more campuses, I started learning about all the different types of racial and ethnic identities. I learned more about sexuality and gender. I consider myself a feminist now, where I wasn't there when I first started the work. As a parent, I've seen diversity through the eyes of a very young person, and that's informed my work. And then also, as I've gotten older, one thing I've learned is I want to depart to the audience is the work changes all the time. You can't ever say that you're completely done, because you're always going to learn something more. And right now, I'm really fascinated with intersectionality and the impact that socioeconomic backgrounds have on the diversity work that we're doing. So it always changes and always evolves. And I think it should. I think that's the natural evolution of the work.
The work certainly does continue to change. So we know that giving students an equitable start leads to better economic and social outcomes. In your opinion, to what extent do improvements to education depend on improving education equity?
Well, we have to level the playing field, and we've known that for decades. We have to level the playing field. And I think that one thing that we thought years ago was once we had it leveled, it was leveled for all time. And what we've learned, especially in the last 10 years, is that we have to continue doing that work. We have to go in, we have to reassess and level it again. So that way we can continue closing those achievement gaps between students who don't have and those who do have. And that group of people changes all the time. You know, for a while it was just about students of color, but now we're finding out that rural white kids, first generation kids, international students who come from countries that are not wealthy, all those people come and bring to our country their experiences that we have to work on also. So just like I talked about in the first question, all of it's changing. We have to keep ahead of those changes to make sure that we're truly providing educational equity.
Excellent. So there are a few organizations whose underlying beliefs, values, and ways of interacting can certainly be improved. How can we address the challenge of changing institutional cultures in their approach to diversity?
Dr. Porter, I really thought about that. I know lots of chief diversity officers. In the SUNY system alone, we had 64 chief diversity officers. And over time, I say I have close friendships with about 100 chief diversity officers, and we all approach the work differently. So I'm going to talk about how I approach it and just and say that's what I think works. Really knowing who you are and knowing what you best give to the field, I think is important. I try to stay steady. I try to really know what I can personally do to create cultural change. I started in student affairs, so a lot of times my impact is on the lives of students because I know how to help make students' experiences better while they're in school. I think you have to be intentional. You know, you have to know the things that you can do and find assistance for the things that you don't know how to do. And I think you have to assess your efforts, drop what doesn't work, don't have a lot of pride around it, start over and do it better and continue to do that. And that's my approach to the work.
I love that. I love that. So what has been your greatest challenge as Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and how have you navigated that space?
So this was a hard one for me to identify because I didn't want to go back into my own personal history as much, but I can tell you about a general feeling I've had that I've carried from position to position. A Chief Diversity Officer job is a hard job. You know, it's not one that's popular with everybody all the time. You don't always get to make the easy decisions. I use this this anecdote. And it doesn't always apply, but it applies a lot of times in my experience. I think sometimes everybody wants us to sing Kumbaya all the time. They want us to walk on the campus and make everybody feel good about diversity. They want us to gather thousands of dollars and put it towards efforts. And all institutions aren't positioned in the same way to do all that, So what I try to do is I try to work with those people who don't understand that, well, I'm beating around the bush. It's not my job to make sure that everybody gets it. It's my job to get the work done. And for some people, they're better at that. I have some colleagues who I really admire the way that their charisma and their personalities get people to buy into the work that they're doing. But for some of us, that slows us down. You have to go in, you have to make change. And you have to make change that's necessary. And change that's necessary isn't always change that everyone agrees to. And so that's been my biggest challenge. Sometimes people really want me to convince them that I might be the right person for the job. I have the right credentials. The president made the right decision. I don't have a lot of time for that space. That's a negative space that I can't live in. Well, the space I have to live in is, my shelf life, and the shelf life of chief diversity officers is often between 3 to 5 years. If we spend the first 2 years doing those things, we've wasted time. I hit the ground running and I get things done. I'm gentler with my approach than I used to be, but I let people know that I need to get things done. I've been at Slippery Rock for 1 month. And I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day. He's a great guy. He told me all these wonderful aspirations he's had at that institution for 20 years. I have a 2-year appointment at Slippery Rock. I said, I really like that. I want to talk to you out there more often, but let's talk about the things we can do to make change while we're having your other conversation.
That's great. We may come back to that.
Okay.
What support mechanisms do we need in place to recruit, retain, and develop a diverse workforce?
I think that my answer is probably going to differ from some of the podcasts that we have, but I'm going to go for it. The Black Doctoral Network taught me to be independent and be opinionated, so I'm going to try that. I think you need a strongly opinionated president. One where you know what they're thinking and you know what support they're going to give you. I think you need a strong chief diversity officer who's willing to speak their mind and do so in a way where they gather social capital and know when to spend that capital to make a difference. You have to have an informed cabinet, and you don't have to have a cabinet you don't have to have a cabinet that's experts in diversity. They have to know that they don't have expertise in diversity, and that's what I'm there for. I think that's the same thing with your board. I really believe in working with those larger political structures to make things happen. I think amongst the people who are doing the work, they have to know that they're supported, but they also have to believe that the work can be done. I think if they're negative about the work being done, I think they need to consider doing some other things. And it's not that they aren't a great contributor to the campus, but they may just not be right in the role that they're in. So I think you have to do that. I think you have to work with the students and make sure that students are very well taken care of and keep that at the forefront of all your decisions that you're making. If you don't have a student body that's taken care of, then it really eliminates the need for the work. And then finally, I think that people know what they're supposed to do. Leadership knows how to support them in ways that make them successful, and that you all are on at least the same path, if not the same page, at least the same path moving forward to get major impact from your efforts.
One of the responses you started with was an informed cabinet.
Yes.
How important is that?
I don't think you can get the work done without it. I didn't know that until my first official chief diversity officer job was at SUNY Oneonta, but I had been a lead person at Allegheny, and I had a cabinet that was informed. They were well informed. And so when I got to Oneonta, as I sat and talked to the cabinet members, they talked to me about the goals and objectives they had around diversity. I said, this is going to work for me. I have an informed cabinet, and what they need to know was they need to know the nuances of the work that I brought to the table. So an example that I give to people is, you don't expect me to know how to run the finance division. Why would you expect a finance division person to know how to do a diversity and inclusion job? If you have a finance person who's interested in the work that you're doing and who's willing to show you methods to finance the things you're doing, I have to say that's a better relationship. I'd rather that relationship. I had that relationship at Oneonta and at Allegheny. It works that way. I've had that relationship at Edinboro and Slippery Rock. I always get to know the finance people, the physical land people, those people who are working with the everyday lives of students. So that way we can impact those things right away, and faculty and staff. If you have a president who has an idea of what they want to do, they don't have to get it right. They have to have an idea of what they want to do, an idea of what they want their impact to be. That's almost half the work. You know, if you have to spend time convincing your president this is work to be done, I have had opportunities to interview on other campuses, and when I've sensed that, I haven't said to the president, you need to do more. What I've said to the president is, I'm not the chief diversity officer for you. I need somebody who's figured out most of it already. You know, even the limitations that they have. You know, I think that's really important. So to me, that's a large part of the work of chief diversity officers that people don't get, is knowing who the leadership is, knowing how to use the leadership successfully. You know, I come from an organizational leadership doctoral process, and I really believe you have to know the system, know how to work it to your advantage, and know when there are going to be changes that need to be made, and use that capital carefully.
Wow, thank you. So how does a dominantly white culture affect our schools and classrooms, and what ways do students experience these effects?
You know, I'm 61, and when I was in my 20s, I was real idealistic about what kind of society we were headed to, you know, and I still am. I still have idealism, but I'm also practical and also my eyes open. You know, I'm really concerned. My daughter is 20 years old, and so it's good to watch her at this phase of my career, because she's at Loyola University in New Orleans, and she's having similar experiences to the ones I've had in my college experience. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with her college, you know, but it does show me how far we haven't made it. You know, there's some things she's able to do. She dyed her hair orange the other day, cut off her eyebrows, and pierced her ears. You know, that's my kid, you know, and, you know, nobody said anything, you know, she's just a young person doing what she needs to do. So she has some freedoms that, you know, that are wonderful, you know, that I didn't have when I was young. But the fact that she can still go to a classroom and have to explain Black history when she's the only Black person in the classroom, you know, the fact that she has to, and not just her, other students I talk to are having that experience. Young Latino women are having that experience. I've worked with trans kids who have to explain to people why they want to use the name that they've chosen to talk about their identity. They shouldn't have to explain or fill out any forms. They should say, here's my name. I don't have to have government ID. I don't have to have anything. This is who I want. This is who I want you to call me, you know. You know, the fact that students who have limited access have to ask for provisions to be made, and feels ashamed to do that, you know, to take tests and just to move around the campuses. You know, I thought all those things would be fixed by now, and I thought we'd all get all that. You know, so that's the thing that I'm most concerned with, that we're still living through experiences where, because we are marked other, you know, because people think our experience is that of an other, they think our experiences aren't important, you know, and I think that the thing I've noticed is, I went to a predominantly white school, and I say this, I think sometimes kids who go to predominantly white schools have to be tough, you know, because you have to deal with things like that so much, you know, and it's nothing against schools who aren't predominantly white or schools who are predominantly white. It's just another layer of fact. We have, you know, our kids have to be tougher than I think they should have to be, you know, and the things that they experience. I watched my child become very old in 2 years, you know, at college, you know. I like it, but some of it I like, you know. It's nice having another adult in the house, you know. She cooks really well, you know, so you get some benefit from them being older, you know. They give us advice, you know, that we need. I know more music than I probably should, you know. But that piece where I saw the light go in her eyes when she was excited freshman, and one of her teachers said to her, so as a Black student who I don't understand, that's the way the teacher talked about it, you know, as a Black student I don't understand. And that same week, a student at my campus had come to me with that, you know, and then people on other campuses experience that. We should be so far beyond all that. So that's the thing. I'm not pessimistic about it, but that's the reality I think that our young people are living that I hadn't expected to be in place, you know.
Wow, and you really said a lot there. I think we've come a long way, but I think we have such a long way to go in that space. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So what are some measurable goals around equity and inclusion? Well,
so here's the way I do it. And I didn't do it this way when I first started my work. We've worked so hard on this for so long. We now are a field that we have studied, and we know what works, and we know how to make change. So if you are sitting in your office and you're thinking you don't need a diversity plan, and you don't need a climate study, and you don't need a consultant to help you with those things, you are living in a fantasy world. You know, you need those tools, you know, and we have tools just like any other field. It's wonderful that we have these tools. When I was young, we were just winging it. You know, when you went from campus to campus, you learn about something good somebody was doing on their campus, you replicate it on your campus. You don't have to go do that anymore. You can just do a Google search in Google Scholar, put in what you're looking for, and you can find numerous solutions to the problems you're working with. So those tools, I think, are really important. We need to close our achievement gaps. We need to hire faculty and staff of color and faculty and staff of other diverse backgrounds. We need to have programs, and we need to support. We have programs and services for the retention of students of color and other students, but we don't support those programs and services. Whenever there's a budget cut, we always look first to those programs and services. We need to make them a part of the mainstay of the campus where we're not cutting those things. We need to fund them adequately. And I'm a frugal chief diversity officer. I don't believe you have to have $60,000 in every office to make things work. But you also don't need diversity officers that run around begging people for resources. You know, that shouldn't be the job of professionals doing this work. You know, so I think you have to do that, and you have to have a clear vision about what it is you're doing. A very clear vision. It doesn't have to be the vision everybody agrees with, but it needs to be a clear vision that everybody understands. You know, so you have to do those basic things. You know, and you do that through planning processes. You know, and then don't put the plan on the shelf. You know, every 3 years, take it down, mark off what you've done, start over. You know, I think that part is really important too.
Right. And there are two things out of that response I want to go deeper with: the diversity plan and the climate survey. Yeah. Tell me your experience with working with both of those entities in higher education.
Well, you know, I did the diversity plan in 2006, and I didn't know that's what I was doing. You know, I called it an action plan. And so I went and sat with the cabinet members and asked them at Allegheny to all give me one goal we could reach around diversity. I was charged by the trustees to do that, and we did it. And they had wonderful things in mind. You know, so we came up with 7 bullet points. You know, and came up with 8. 7 went through. I always think if you get 89%, you're batting 100. You know, so 7 to 8 went through, and they made drastic changes in the campus community. You know, we immediately got new faculty. Immediately. It didn't work out for all of them, but one of them is like a scientist in Switzerland now. You know, so you know we've started this young man's career. You know, so we did really impactful work because we had a plan. When I got to the SUNY system, I was part of a large group where we decided that each campus needed to do a diversity plan. And I was very proud at the end of a development of ours. They called ours robust, and the faculty senate voted unanimously to endorse our plan. And we started with a letter to the president saying that Terrence needs to step down because he don't know what he's doing. You know, so, yeah, SUNY Oneonta is a wonderful campus, and if you're watching, I'm sorry, I told our business, but it's a wonderful campus. But they hold you to very high standards, you know, and they wanted a strong, robust plan, and that's what we came up with. It's so good that they're ready to do another one. I've just been gone 2 or 3 years, and they're ready to start another process, you know. So that's been my experience with plans. I did my first climate study also at Allegheny College, but I was only there for part of the time because I went to graduate school. So I sat there and helped develop the questions and things like that, but I didn't really know the impact on the campus. I was fortunate to work again with Susan Rankin, who was our consultant at Oneonta, and I was the person who was one of the principal investigators and got to start it from scratch to finish. And again, we did a very good process, and we did a climate study, and this is something for everyone to think about. Our climate study was about SUNY Oneonta. It wasn't about all the campuses in the country, even though there were some questions that were generic, but it was particular to SUNY Oneonta. SUNY Oneonta has a unique trans community because in New York, Oneonta is considered to have some leadership around trans issues. There's a really wonderful doctor there who is an expert in the field. So some of our questions were questions they might not be applicable to other campuses. But when we ended, we got really rich data. We also found the problems with our survey. So I know that next time they give the survey, we need to know about the experiences of people of color who come from New York City, because 50% of people of color come from Brooklyn, Bronx. And I know I'm going to forget one of the communities, but they come from the New York City area. They're having a much different experience than the kids who come from Binghamton and Buffalo. You know, and so that was a very wise area that they want to go into next. They really want to study those people's experiences. We've done a plan at Edinboro, and we called it an action plan because they wanted it quick, and I did it myself. You know, but at Slippery Rock, we're going to sit down and we're going to develop a plan that will be done in August, and I believe that's the best place for them to start. For that community, I actually want to start looking at action items right now to see if there's anything we can do right now. You know. So I think they're really instrumental to your work. It gives you a really good vision of what the campus's expectations are around the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So how equipped do you feel those who are leading in universities, in the workplace, in the marketplace, are in addressing issues of diversity?
So I'm from Oklahoma, and we're plain spoken. So if you don't mind, we'll be plain spoken. They're all right. They're all right. I've had presidents who know more. I've had presidents who know less. Boards who have known more. Boards who have known less. They need chief diversity officers, and they need. I was trying to figure out language to say it when I was at Allegheny. I need to go back to school to figure out the language to say it, and now I have a simple way to say it. If you need a finance person, if you need a enrollment manager, if you need a student affairs manager, you need somebody to manage your diversity efforts too. Otherwise, what you have is a lot of well-intentioned people walking around campus doing everything they can, and you see it on campus. You see dozens of programs and dozens of activities and dozens of committees and things like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have a lead person to help leadership understand what that means, help the community understand what it means, you're just going to keep spinning your wheels for years and years. You need a chief diversity officer, and you need one that you believe in. So you might hire the one who looks good on paper, but if that person isn't the one that you believe in, then you're not doing that person a good service, or you're doing us. I want people to get more intentional about how they hire us. I want them to get more focused on what they actually need before we get there, because that's what they do when they talk about the finance director. When there's a finance director, they say we need to raise X amount of money in this amount of time. Advancement person, we need to raise X amount of money. The problem with our work is not monetary. We're not measured by how much money we bring in. Now, if we bring in money, we're all happy about that, but we're never going to raise the kind of money that the finance manager is directing, So when we're at that table, what people need to understand is the essence of our work and why we're necessary, and how us doing our work well helps the whole college, do well, and how it impacts each office. I talked about earlier learning my coworkers. I need to know what my coworkers are doing, so I can speak articulately to them about how my work fits into what they're doing. And when I go to them, being very, very informed about what exactly I need. I don't need to go in and say, I need more money for programs. I need to go in and say, I need money for this program because this is the impact it's going to have on the students, and this is the return that we're going to get on our investment. We have to be much more knowledgeable and much more skilled than we had to be in the past. Some of the younger chief diversity officers are going to programs where they're learning that, but a lot of the old ones like me, we started doing practitioners work, and that's not the way that we were trained into the work. But a lot of, to speak up for the old people, we still are doing pretty good though. Still pretty good, yeah. If we match that, if nothing else, give us some points for last.
I love that, but you bring up a great point that in every aspect of an organization, there is someone over that specific area. That is such a great point. And so those organizations without someone that is truly doing the work of diversity and inclusion, they're really missing out.
Well, and some schools are doubling up the position and giving like to a vice provost and to do the student piece and academic piece. I don't argue against that much. To do that a way where that person could be successful. If you're going to make somebody vice president for student affairs and chief diversity officer, they need another layer of support that they have than they have. They need a really strong diversity practitioner, an office of some sort, maybe even a different accounting system. They need to be able to define their work and do it in ways that complement. I've seen people do it really well, but it's been when they've had presidents who've been very aware of that they're asking them to do two jobs. I'm doing two jobs right now, and both of my presidents, they came up with it, and when they came up with it, I was like, wow, in this era of times when we have financial resources that are limited, they came up with this way for me to continue my work and have impact on two campuses. That was really future thinking, and I don't even know if they think of that way, but they both asked me, Terrence, you need some time? I was like, you want me to take a minute? This is a great idea. Even for myself, career-wise, what a wonderful thing that happened in my career. I get to guide two campuses' diversity efforts and try to make progress at the same time with both. We're gonna go for it. We're gonna do a good job. So taking advantage of that and knowing when you have somebody who gets all that is really important. You would not even think about not having a finance person. You wouldn't think
so true.
Management person. No campus is going to run without a student affairs person. No campus should run without a chief diversity officer. Unless it's intentional. If you can't afford it, you can't do it, then say that to your campus community. We have to figure another way out to do this. Because there are other models that work without a chief diversity officer. Still, what you're going to do is you're going to put that responsibility on somebody who is not getting paid for it, not getting recognized for it, and won't have any power for it. You got to realize that's what you're doing. There'll be somebody who's doing the work who is just not getting the recognition they need. But if you really can't afford it, then empower that person in other ways.
Yes. And I would also think that that person needs to be equipped themselves with leading in that space. I think that's important.
Well,
As well.
and I think people very rarely ask somebody if they're ready for that. They just kind of give it to them, you know.
Right.
I think you really have to ask the person. I was fortunate. I got to mentor a couple of people who their presidents have given them the opportunity to lead the diversity efforts, and they're not ready to make a decision about diversity. So I actually agree with the presidents. I don't think they're ready to make a decision to make chief diversity, but they are ready to treat those people well, and they approach them respectfully. And I advise the people. I say, I think you should do it. I think you should do it. I say, I think it's a good opportunity. And who knows, they may decide that they want to pursue more education and become a chief diversity officer, or they may decide that's not the role for them. But still, the campus will benefit from that good arrangement they have with the president.
Wow, I love that. So how can individuals become more aware and more sensitive of other cultures? Because I really believe that's the basis of diversity and inclusion. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So I was raised by a first grade teacher and a sixth grade teacher who taught gym, a sixth grade math teacher who taught gym. And my whole family was teachers. Like every time you went to dinner, everybody was always making you spell something, make you read something, make you explain some kind of concept. They weren't big science and math people, but English and communications, that was my family. And almost every generation of my family was like that. On my wife's side, she's college professors and superintendents, so we both came up the same way. So I kind of think about it the way I think about raising a child. Make them read, read everything you can, and read the things that are interesting to you and read the things that aren't interesting to you. If the only thing that's interesting to you are comic books, well, then find comic books that talk about diverse people's lived experiences. If the only thing that's interesting to you are biographies, I'm reading right now W.E.B. Du Bois biographies, both the old one and the new one. And I'm learning so much that I thought I knew all about him. I'm learning so much. So constantly read and inform yourself. Attend programs and activities that you enjoy anyway, but think about a different spin on it. So if you always go to Irish Heritage Day, then go to Black Heritage Month. If you always go to Black Heritage Month, then attend Diwali. Attend things that you put yourself in spaces, and they don't always have to be uncomfortable spaces. Because some people say, well, put yourself in uncomfortable. Everybody can't do that. So put yourself in comfortable spaces then, where you feel like you might have a friend that that's involved in activity, but attend programs, activities, and do a range of things so you get a lot of different ideas. I think going to lectures is a way I first started learning more about my own culture, and it made me learn even more about other things. At the University of Oklahoma, they're part of the big 12 conference on Black student government now. Once a year, the students would gather on one campus and have these wonderful speakers come in. I heard Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson, Frances Cress Welsing back when she was so raw and so important to our discussions. I heard all these wonderful people, and I kept learning so much more. And I'd had Black Studies courses, but not been taught by so many different people and so many different opinions around diversity. Then that made me start going to Native American events and going to Latino events and going to international events. And I just kept learning. And so continuing to learn is really good. And then don't miss out though on talking to individuals. If you're sitting on a bus or sitting in a classroom, sitting at the airport, and somebody opens a discussion with you who doesn't look like you, don't get up. Sit and engage and learn more. We got exposed to homelessness early in our marriage. And one of the things we did, my wife is a sociologist. And so she was a young sociologist and she was still in school. And she showed me how a sociologist does things. I said, what do you mean? We followed a young woman who was smoking a crack pipe on the street one day. And she looked like a young woman who had means. She was cisgender. She was a young white woman. And my wife was like, why would she do that? And so she said, I'm going to talk to her. I was like, wait a minute. I said, we're in San Francisco. We don't know anything about this. Why would we do that? We did it though, and we had a rich experience. The young woman didn't only talk to her for a moment, but that opened my mind too. I said, let's try to do that more often. So we met homeless couples. We met. I had deep, rich, meaningful experience with a young man who had exceptionalities. At SUNY Oneonta, it forever changed my outlook and my way of working with people who had exceptionalities. And I thought I knew things until I sat with that person. So constantly testing ourselves and constantly knowing. In graduate school, they tell you the best thing you can know is what you don't know. That is the best thing you can know. And you don't have to push yourself. You got a long life ahead of you. You can start with the smallest thing that you want to know about, but really opening your mind. I wrote a paper about how I learned, and this is a little mushy, but I fell in love with my wife through reading about bell hooks. you know, because as we were new in our relationship, she was a residence life person and their lives are horrible. They're always out, you know. So I'd be at her apartment waiting to have dinner, and she'd be on call, you know, dealing with some, you know, some disastrous thing or another, you know. And she said she didn't have TV, and so she had all these books. And I said, where should I start? And I think she might have been intentional. She gave me a Bell Hooks book, you know, and she gave me a Cornel West book, and he opened my mind around critical race theory. And Bell Hooks taught me about feminism and taught me who she was, and then also taught me who I was through a feminist lens, you know. And I started valuing my wife in a different way, and valuing those. I grew up in a matriarchal family with plenty of men, but it was a matriarchal family. And I also started valuing the contributions of the women in my family differently. I told my aunt that she was a feminist, and she was offended. She was offended. And so I said, you pledged Delta Sigma Theta when you were young. I said, when your family didn't have any Greeks in it. I said, you raised that money on your own. I said, you went to Dillard University and set a path for your sisters to go to Dillard. I said, and you bought your own house at 26 years old. I said, and then you took care of your mother until she died in that house and gave her a wonderful life. I said, you were a feminist. I said, you were a feminist. I said, because you had to be strong to do all that, you know. And she didn't understand herself through that light. And my auntie was tough. She was a tall woman, very tough, you know. Life had made her that way, and she almost cried. Now, she didn't cry because that's not my auntie, but she almost cried. She almost cried, and she thought about it. She said, "That's what you've seen." I said, "That's what I've seen my whole life watching you." I said, "I'm trying to be like you," and she didn't know that. She didn't. So I learned a lot that way, and I think that's the way people learn.
Wow, I tell you, the bottom line is no excuses really to becoming
excuse.
More aware. Absolutely, I love that.
Can I add a little something to it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you don't have to be concerned about all the aspects of diversity. Find the thing that you have passion around. I met a very racist older white man who told me he was the most racist. He was pretty proud of it because I was a chief diversity officer. Let me tell you why you shouldn't have work. And when he got done, I had heard his whole story. I said, now tell me more about your autistic grandchild. And he told me about his love and his passion for him. I said, yeah. I said, that's an aspect of diversity. I said, so I hate to tell you, you like diversity. I said, you love your child. I said, you've been on marches, you've contributed money. I said, so relax a little bit.
Wow. You know, and that's a very good point, Dr. Mitchell. People confuse diversity with just race, yeah. Pretty much but it's a vast, you know, it includes so much more than that. So yeah. That's a very great point. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Mitchell, how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network enhanced your profession?
So, I tell stories, you can tell. I love to tell stories. But I have a great story to tell about the Black Doctoral Network. I was a 50-year-old graduate student when I learned about the Black Doctoral Network. I was doing a search, and I had gone my first year of classes, and I was feeling good. You know, your first year, you feel kind of good, you know. But I was one of 4 African-American people in my cohort. I think only 2 of us ended up completing. And so I had just watched somebody drop out. And I got concerned because I really enjoyed having some people in my cohort. We had 23 people in my cohort. I enjoyed having some people of color in my cohort. I didn't know how much I needed that when I went back to school. You know, my faculty weren't people of color, but they were great faculty. So I didn't need it there. I needed to be working along with people of color. Somebody I could ask a question to and not feel that I was going to be judged. You know, and my white colleagues, they were good. They were really good, very friendly, very warm, very opening. But they had made some comments that, you know, only a person of color would understand. You know, so sometimes I need to pull them to the side and say, hey, what did you think of that? You know, I then stumbled across the Black Doctoral Network, and even the concept of it made my shoulders go down a little bit. You know, I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh. And then I think I actually met Deandra back then. You know, I think she was a graduate student or something associated with the program because I called. You know, I'm not too shy. You know, so I found the number online and I called and I was kind of like, what is this? And they talked to me, and they were young. You know, they talked about their aspirations, what they're going to be. So over the years, as a graduate student, I submitted some papers for consideration. I thought I knew what my doctoral topic was. So one year I thought I was going to present, and then my chair told me, you don't know what you're talking about. So I canceled that presentation. When I got to Oneonta, they were talking about going to conferences to talk about positions at Oneonta. I couldn't see any place better to go, you know. So the first thing I went to was a very small workshop in Philadelphia. Wasn't many people there, you know, but what I saw was all these young scholars. It was like 40, you know, walking around and they were excited to tell me about their research. And I was excited to talk to them about mine, you know. So I started getting further along in my thoughts and watched them get further along in theirs. I was at least a decade or 2 or 3, maybe, older than some of them, you know. So it was nice to have that interaction. My first conference that I went to, I want to say it was the one in 2017, but I might have gone to the one before that one too. But in 2017, they asked me, little Terrence Mitchell from Oklahoma, you know, Janice Mitchell's baby, you know, who she still wonders, how'd you get a doctorate, man? You know, they asked me to sit on a panel with Tim Wise, and I had interactions with Tim Wise all my life. You know, I borrowed him to speak for places. He's brilliant. And I said, you want me to sit on the panel with Tim Wise? But I guess I'm making a short story very long. They've always honored me. They've always respected me. They've always encouraged me. They've always valued my research. You know, when others didn't understand what I was talking about, sometimes they helped me understand what I was talking about. When I went to the conference last year, my wife attended with me. I think she had been to others with me, but she hadn't been a presenter, you know. And watching them value her come in that space because she was with me and because of her scholarship over the years, you know, the Black Doctoral Network has always been my family. Has always been, and will always be my family. They can always ask me to do anything. They haven't asked me for very much money, but I'll give it to them. I'll give it to them, you know, and now that they know, you know, the things change, but they've had a huge impact on me. And I've encouraged others to participate, but I'm kind of selfish with my Black Doctoral Network experience. They don't have to, you know. If I'm the only person who knows they're good, they're good. When I went to the last career fair, there were maybe only 2 or 3 SUNY schools there, and we all kind of winked at each other. Because we know that no matter what our experiences are in these early years, because we're still early in our formation, in 20 years, everybody be like, why weren't we at the Black Doctoral Network conference? Why weren't we going there to meet our scholars? You know, because that's who they are, and that's who they'll always be. You know.
Wow, I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, Dr. Mitchell, I just thank you for joining us today. It has been my pleasure. So please tell our viewers and listeners, where can they learn more about you and the work that you are doing?
Well, one thing I learned through the young people at Black Doctoral Network, my irons have been very many fires. So one thing I didn't get to talk about was as I began my work with the Black Doctoral Network and with my new career, because this was a reimagining of the career I had before. I also started a nonprofit. So you can find our nonprofit at creedonline.org. And we are independent education consultants. If nothing else, if you have a young person that's graduating, we love to send graduation gifts to our young people to celebrate them and let the world know what they've accomplished in high school and in graduation. Our other work with them is small. We give mini grants. Sometimes kids break their glasses. They need $50 to repair their glasses. We send small grants, but we do that. And we don't even worry about donations and things like that. We're a small group of people. We generate the money ourselves, you know. So please look at us that way. My Instagram, I'm coming into this century. I have an Instagram now. It's CDIO_Edinboro It's new and it's not as developed as some of the Instagram sites, but I have learned if I hire the right young person, I'll be very modern in a couple of years. But you can see us there. I have websites at Edinboro, but I don't have any websites at Slippery Rock yet. And then also, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. A lot of information, a lot of my path is on LinkedIn. And I'm on Facebook a little bit too much.
You said a little too much.
A little too much.
Okay. Well, we thank you so much. So guys, please be sure to stay connected to the BDN and connect with us on all of our social media channels. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. We hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, and subscribe and tell a friend.